Welcome to another edition of the Polto Show. This is the show that educates you right there worldwide as you're watching this show. I have a great show tonight, as we do every week. But before I do the night show, next week we got the mortgage broker coming on if anybody out there has a modification or refinance. But my guest today, we're going to tell you a little bit about her first. She counsels many movie stars and celebrities on a regular basis. She recently did a two-part interview on her local Channel 10 station, NBC, which helped the TV Medium show that you're all watching. Most recently, Valerie Morrison was featured in her episode A Mother's Plea that aired on Court TV, Court Detectives. Valerie Morrison's abilities were instrumental in solving of this murder and took place in the Philadelphia area, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She's been a regular in the radio and TV industry for the past 30 years. You may remember her best for her 4-year running television appearance as a regular guest on People Are Talking, hosted by Maury Povich. She was a regular on The Franklin Show on WOR-TV, Times Square. She appeared on The Jesse Raphael Show, Phil Donahue Show, Larry King Show, Jenny Jones, only to name a few. Valerie also, you can hear her on the radio station, 92.1 in the Philadelphia area, Jersey area, WNWR 1540. Also, she works without compensation as a medium with many law enforcement agencies. She has brought accurate information to them, solving crimes. She's the icon of the psychics, and she's still humble to this day. She does not charge hundreds, thousands of dollars. She's not booked up for years, as many out there are. Before we bring my guest on, we're going to ask her some tough questions. First of all, when you receive, as much as I know about psychics, and she's going to answer them, but when you receive information about your future, whether it's good or bad, the first step is to make sure you're grounded in the present. Ask yourself, what's the best way to work with the knowledge that you've been given to you in a good and positive way? Are psychics, what they say to you, cast in stone? Well, you're going to find out today. There is many illusions and disillusions about psychics. So today we're going to take the time to knock the wind out of the myth out of many psychics out there that are worldwide. No psychic, at least in my eyes, and we'll ask her tonight, but no psychic can predict the lottery numbers for anyone. If they could, they'd be winning all the lotteries around the world, plus horse races, plus casinos. Each of us humans have a gift from God called free will. We are free to choose our thoughts, our life, and the people we want to be with. So there's no amount of candles or spells that can make a person go against free will. Like a psychic, if a psychic asks you for lots and lots of money, hundreds and thousands of dollars for their service, run like crazy. There are many psychics that I've known through the years, and everybody's addicted to them. But today we're going to separate the facts from the fiction. When I've appeared, normally I say with Valerie on our radio show, WWDB, we're back to back. Well, today we're side to side, and many people contact her, even on the radio show, and you may think that I'm the big good cop, bad cop. I'm the bad cop because I'll say one question. Well, tonight we're not going to have questions and answers about our private life, our personal life. We're not going to have answers about your private life and your personal life. You're going to know the real Valerie Morrison. You're going to know what makes her tick. I call her the icon of the psychic world. And the reason why I call her the icon of the psychic world, there's many psychics out there. I've known a lot through my day. And many of them I called copycats. They're good. They're not the best. And when I say they're good and not the best, because you have to earn your merit. You have to earn your degree. And you can't earn your degree with reality shows or because you go seminars or because they put you on TV. We've been there back and forth. And yet she's humble because she has this gift of helping people. She should be on a mansion, $1 million mansion. She's not, as others are out there. Why? Because others are charging people thousands of dollars worldwide. I sit back and I watch. And when I was, and I still am, a radio talk show host, when Valerie was a guest on my one show, she used to help other psychics come on the show with her. And these other psychics, she gave them a leadway to say, hey, I'm going to help you out as well. And it's going to be up to them to make their mark. And half of them didn't. But she's still around. So just like with my business with credit, all the icons come and go. I'm still around. The icons of psychic will come and go. Valerie's still around. So today, I've asked you to email me before this show. I've asked you to email me questions, hard questions that you wanted to know from her. But before I bring her on, I have to tell you a little minor story about a lighthouse. I'm not going to mention anything personal, but this one thing I have to. She gave me a card for my best friend that died, and on this card was a lighthouse. Well, this lighthouse was following everybody around, and it was a message. To me, it was a message from the other side. And I believed it, and everybody else around me believed it. It was from the other side, because lighthouses were coming around, and I have lighthouses in my house. Now I have lighthouses everywhere I went. And if you have a lighthouse, get it, pick it up, because it's a sign from the other side. Somebody's watching over you. Today we're going to separate the facts from the fiction about psychics and what we're going to do, but we're going to have a special treat before I bring her on as well. If you're from another country, we're going to show you at the end how you could email her. And also, I'm going to have a special treat here because many of you wish to become my clients for credit. If you become my client, you will receive a free reading from Valerie Morrison. And that's my promise to you. But right now, I'd like to welcome Valerie Morrison on the Pearl Polto Show.
Pearl, as usual, it's great to be with you. And we've known each other for a long time.
Yes.
And I haven't seen one thing that you haven't taken me into. And I appreciate that. My people love you. And it is true. Credit, I'm very humble to say this, but I lost a daughter, and my husband started to go downhill. I lost my husband 2.5 years ago. And lo and behold, you have to understand, a man usually takes care of the money. I found out that I was ready to go bankrupt because I didn't know what I was doing.
No, this is not about me today.
I want to say this to people because I hope they will get in touch with you for that free reading with me. And I just want to say that you brought me out of a hole without a bankruptcy, plus all the other things you've done for me.
And vice versa.
And corrected me in a lot of things. I wanted to say that, I think I have 4 credit cards already, so I think I won't run them up. But I just feel being given this gift, I have to really give, ladies and gentlemen, my grandfather who escaped Hungary from the Germans.
That was my first question. How did you start?
Well, we were very poor, which is the book I'm trying to get ready that you wanted me to, insisted on me doing. We were very poor when I was little, and I lived with my grandfather and 3 of my cousins who were older than me. We used to gather coal off the tracks, to keep warm at night, because when you come to this country from Hungary or any other place, you know that.
You have
to have a job.
Did you live in Hungary?
No, I didn't. I did not. My grandfather brought 13 of his children here, escaped with 13 of his children.
Okay.
And with a very religious man on a boat, and 3 of his children died on the way here. So when I started living with my grandfather, who became a miner through the day, because you do have to have a job when you come here, and at night he did psychic readings. And I used to listen to him and think, he's crazy. There I was playing jacks at his feet, and he's telling a woman whose husband cheated on her that go home and stir the soup. Later, of course, as I grew up, I realized it meant leave it alone or build another bedroom for the person if you're going to keep bringing it up. But I started to see pearl spirits. And I started to feel things.
How old were
And
you then?
I was 5 years old when I saw my first angel, and it frightened me. It didn't have wings, so I would imagine it was someone who was departed. I see many people think of angels as wings, but Shelley did a lot of work on angels, and angels did not have wings. They just had the aura all around them.
Okay.
Having the aura all around them made them look like they had wings. And I got frightened, and I covered my head up. And I was still in a crib at 5 years old, so when I looked again, he, my husband used to say angels do not have a sex, so we're gone. And then it was shortly after that I told my grandfather, and he was very upset. He did not want me in this field. He said it had its toll and it had its price. And of course, I've lost 3 of my loved ones, and I guess he was right because he lost 3 of his. My feelings on getting started, as you say, my first real spiritual thing is, and it's probably a prophecy, ladies and gentlemen, that I ignored. When I was approximately 7 or 8 years old, my grandfather had, from Hungary, you have a lot of things you say is superstitious. He said, never ever put coats on the bed. It will bring you bad luck because you have to sleep under the negative vibrations they've brushed against. It could be a criminal they brushed against. It could be a rapist. It could be anyone they brushed against.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went up to my bedroom. He sent me to bed. It was not that great in school because I wouldn't listen. And I wanted to be with my grandfather. So, of course, my grandfather had me homeschooled. But I went up to my bedroom one night because I was not a good girl. I bit the teacher's finger, and that was before I went into the convent, of course.
Oh, we're going to go into that
We'll talk about that later. But what happened was that I had an Aunt Helen. Now, my daughter who was killed, her name was Helen. And my Aunt Helen was about 32 years old, beautiful, blonde, tall, just like my daughter. And I said, Aunt Helen. And then I looked and I saw all these coats on the bed. And I thought, oh my gosh, my grandfather is going to be so angry. And I said, Aunt Helen, I'm so glad to see you. And the closer she got to me, something inside of me just became very frightened. Instead of the way I am now with spirits, I'm not afraid of them at all and talk to them a lot. But she was coming towards me, and I had this massive smell of flowers. And I screamed. And as I screamed, my grandfather ran upstairs, and I said, Aunt Helen's dead, Aunt Helen's dead. He said, honey, she's 32. I just spoke to her. She's fine. She was found dead in bed the next morning. Now we could go ahead and say, and I've just realized this through writing the book, that was my daughter's death, who was 32. She was tall and beautiful and blonde. Her name was Helen. When I saw that, was that a gift of prophecy? Was it a vision of the future, my future? Or was it that I saw my Aunt Helen? The more I think about it, the more I feel that God gave me a daughter that was wonderful for 32 years, and that was my gift of vision for the future. And now I do it every day for everyone else.
Well, the first question, a lot of people emailed me, and this was the question. I said to them not to get it personal, but they were going to find out, which they normally, when a person goes to a psychic, naturally, they want to know about themselves only, their jobs, whatever. But they really do not know when they search for a psychic. They either see it on the internet, on television, or they become famous. What age, and you actually said it, what age were you when you knew you had powers at age 5?
I don't use the word powers. I know a lot of people use those on radio and television. I just call it a gift from God. I have a gift from God, and I would say approximately the age of 8 when I had that happen to me. And previous to that,
Were you scared?
well, I was frightened when I saw my Aunt Helen, yes, but the coats were gone from the bed, so that was. But I didn't put it together that years later I named my daughter Helen, and that would happen. And what happened was that I feel as though I remember one time my mother had stopped over to see my grandfather, who was raising me while Mom was being waitressing and sewing in a factory in Philadelphia and so on, and I was playing in water, a tub of water. And I heard my mother say on the phone, there's no way that I can finish this ironing because I pulled the plug out of the wall and the prongs are still in. Well, being a young child, 7 or 8 years old, I figured I'll go over and pull them out for her. So got out of the water, Pearl, and I went over and I touched the prongs. And of course, all I remember is spinning through the air and hitting, I guess, the wall. I didn't feel anything across the way. The next thing I knew, fire rescue was there, and a fireman looked at me, and they brought me back, and I said, am I dead or alive? And he smiled, and when he smiled, all this black went all around him, which is now called the aura, as you know, has been for centuries, I guess. And it went around him, and he was so nice to me, but he was killed in a fire a week later.
You went into the convent.
Yes.
So obviously one of the questions was, what religion are you? And obviously it's Catholic.
I am Catholic, and I embrace all religions.
So what made you go into the nunhood, and what made you leave the nunhood?
Oh, you really don't want to know that? Okay, yes, I'll tell you.
And did you see things when you were in the nun? Did you see certain things that nobody else seen?
Things I shouldn't have said, I guess, yes. What happened was that my mother did marry a man when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And he was wonderful, Italian man from Naples, and just very good to me. Did everything for me. And had the nightclub in Pittsburgh where I met Sinatra and the rest of the guys. And I was never conceited over it because it just was another person that came to our house. And so my father said, this girl's getting out of control. I mean, come on, she skips school, she goes down the hill, she goes to see everybody she doesn't know. She's in danger. We've got to do something with her. So being homeschooled, they put me in the Carmelite order, which is, of course, St. Teresa of the Little Flower, which you're familiar with. Yeah. And I just wouldn't shut up. You wouldn't understand how many times I had to be on my knees like this, praying because I talk. So the nun was shaking her finger at me like this about 6 months into this, and I bit it. The same thing I did previously. And she called my father saying, this child is intolerable. She will never be able to stay here. She never shuts up, and you have to come and get her. Well, after 6 months, and I really, really wanted to be, and I have a ring on now from the convent, and I wanted to be married to Christ, and I wanted to stay in the convent, but I kept seeing dead nuns walking around all the time. I wasn't going to go up to someone. So one time, that's why she got upset. I went up to her and said, your father just died. And she said, the mother, they call her mother. I said, Mother, your father just died. And she said, I'm calling your father. I've had enough of this. So 6 more hours of prayer. All right, my father came and got me. Her father died.
So this is why you never watched really any TV when you were growing up?
Oh, my goodness, or radio or anything. No.
So this is new to you, this radio and television that you've been on for all these years, but when you were growing up, obviously you weren't allowed to watch TV.
Actually, even my father did not permit me to watch certain things. I mean, something like Gilligan's Island or something that might be more childlike. I think the only mystery I ever watched as a child with my father was something with Raymond Burr, and I can't even remember what it was. And I always said my father looked like Raymond Burr. So, no, I mean, my manager and my friend Don have oftentimes said to me, don't you remember this song? Or don't? No, I don't. Because my dad had a jazz club, and I really don't remember the music that all of you remember. I just never was raised with it, and as I became a little older and helped my dad out at the club, I grew up with the people that I've told you about, the Sinatra group and the James Darrens and people like that. But I think I remember one song, and I don't know who sang it. You would know, Pearl. Mac the Knife?
Bobby Darin.
Okay, there you go.
Bobby Darin.
That's about it, ladies and gentlemen.
You also married somebody from the priesthood.
I did. I did.
I mean, talk about a book and a reality show. I mean, you actually were in the convent, you were a nun, and then, I mean, real quick, let's make this a 5-minute thing. How did you meet your husband if he's in the priesthood?
Actually, my husband was very good friends with my father.
Okay.
And my father did have his spiritual side. And here I am running around, a 15, 16-year-old kid, you know, not listening, not doing everything. Loved my father. Don't get me wrong. I loved my father. And he brought Frank. I was thinking of Frank Sinatra again. He brought Charles around a lot. And Charles, I didn't know, had been a priest. He left the priesthood to take care of his mother, who was dying of cancer. He had already lost his father. And to all things for a priest, his father had committed suicide. And so it was a very difficult time for him. I was 16 going 15, I would say, going on 21 at that point. So every day that I saw Charles visiting my father, I would say, "Will you marry me?" And he'd say, "Will you get away from me, kid, and leave me alone?" I never knew he was a priest. And then suddenly one day I got a telephone call, and he asked to speak to me, and my father was standing there. I have a feeling that was an arranged thing. And he said, "I'm not good at rejection, Valerie." And I said, "Okay." And I'd been telling him every day, "I love you. I love you. I love you." And he said, "Will you marry me?" And I said, "How fast?"
When we come back, we're going to take the questions that were emailed to me about Valerie Morrison. Now you're going to hear questions that you asked. We'll be right back.
Consumers, are you being harassed by debt collectors? Whether you owe the debt or not, if you're receiving phone calls or letters from collection agencies or law firms acting as debt collectors, you, the consumer, have rights. I'm consumer protection attorney Carrie Flitter. You have heard me as a guest on Polto's show. There are federal and state laws that protect consumers from the tactics used in the collection of debt. Whether your debt is owed or not, whether you've made payment arrangements or not, you have rights. If you're receiving letters or calls from debt collectors, feel free to contact our office toll-free at 888-668-1225. We'll review the communication you've received from the collector or discuss any telephone calls. If your rights have been violated, we can bring legal action against the debt collector at no cost to you. Our telephone number is 888-668-1225 or visit our website, www.consumerslaw.com. That's consumerslaw with an S.com. This is Carrie Flitter, advocate for your consumer rights. The collectors have lawyers. You should have one too. Our number again, toll-free, Pennsylvania or New Jersey, 888-668-1225.
All right, you're listening to Polto Show, and my guest today is Valerie Morrison. Now, you heard a lot about her, and the reason why I'm saying she's humble is because many of you have seen many TV shows out there with all the psychics out there. They're coming out of the woodwork. And I have an old saying, even with the credit, you know, many of you see everybody coming out of the woodwork, and you know, when I sit back, and after 30 years, I was wondering why me and Valerie never even crossed paths in these green rooms. But we didn't. So it was meant to be when I did meet her, and it was strong when I met her. But the questions that now it's going to come to the questions and answers that you said you don't want to. I said, don't tell me your personal life. Don't want to hear it. Is intuition the same as being psychic?
Yes, it is. Many people have intuition and they don't use it, and that's sad. It's I can give you an example of my own. While I'm psychic, but still I have intuition. I was driving a car on Father's Day one day with a lot of gifts for Charles, and I got to a certain area in Roxborough where I live, and I heard a little voice in my head say, "Don't go down that road." Well, I'd never been down the road next to that place, and I thought, "Oh, I'm going to go down the road." So I went down the road, and I heard a crash, and I got out of the car, and I said, "Who threw a bottle at my car?" And someone said, "Lady, no one threw a bottle at your car. You just hit that guy's truck." And it was my intuition. If I had have followed saying, "Don't go down that road." So this is what I tell people. When you feel something or someone is not right for you, gently walk away from it. By the way, Fortunately, the woman of the truck knew me, and I was able to take care of the deal. But I'm just saying that our intuition can save our life. It is psychic energy. It's just that it's stronger. The psychic energy is stronger. When we have intuition about going on a certain train, which I had to take to Maryland, to take to Washington, D.C., to see Maury Povich one day. And a nun of mine, a friend of mine who was a nun, I said, it's not going to snow. It was New Year's Day. She said, it's pouring like crazy. And my Austin, my chauffeur at that time from Mr. S, said he couldn't drive to Washington in the limo in this snow. And I said, don't worry, come tomorrow morning, it's going to end. It ended the next day. I drove there. We got there safely. My girlfriend was in the horrible train wreck that I would have been on, because it was chosen by either God or my own intuition saying the snow would stop, and I followed that intuition. My girlfriend, who was the nun, was killed.
Wow. Another question asked of one of the viewers out there: since some religions do not believe in you, why not?
I don't have a lot of religions that don't believe in me. I have doctors who are Jewish that send a lot of people to me, even their family members. They ask me questions. There are some people that will say, I'm not sure. And if you're a born-again Christian, it's nothing against you. But, I can hold you, word for word on that Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings. I can go through the whole thing with you and make you believe that how could I know all of these things. The only gift in the Bible, one gift that God gave to us in the Old Testament now, before Jesus came, and the New Testament when Jesus did come, is verbatim. It's in Joel and Acts. Look it up. It says, your young men shall prophesy, your old men shall have dreams, and there will be people that will have visions. Now, how could it be in the Old Testament before Jesus and the New Testament? It's the only verbatim verse that's there. So my feelings are that if you don't believe, that's up to you. I can only tell you what I see. I'm not going to pounce on you. I don't believe in that. I will not go into a store. I will not go into anywhere and jump on you and say, oh, gee, your brother died 2 years ago. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in it because I'll tell you why. I will see the spirit behind you. And sometimes the spirit will hold up its hand like this to me, meaning they're not ready. And other times the spirit will smile and say, and I'll go over gently and say, gee, I'm really sorry that you lost your sister. And this happened recently. And she said, you knew my sister? And I said, no, I didn't. And then she said, you're Valerie Morrison. I'm recognized by the spirit and by the people who love me wherever I go. I just feel as though, Pearl, to be honest with you, that all religions have a certain aspect of vision, and that if they use it, they will be saved, because we are all psychic. It's psychic. Just that some have much more than others, and there are frauds out there, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to the frauds out there, because there is many.
You've got to make sure you go to someone a friend said was okay for you to go to, or someone you've heard, not just on radio and TV. That doesn't mean a thing that they're good.
Yes.
Just because you hear them.
Can a psychic can you predict your own life? And obviously you can't tickle yourself. You're not going to laugh if you tickle yourself, but can you predict your own life?
No. A psychic cannot predict their own life, and if they say they can, they're lying. Can a person have a feeling about something and it happens? Absolutely. That is your intuition that's deep within you. It is your own psychic within yourself, but it's rare. Would I have been able to tell you that my daughter at 32 would be killed horribly in a car accident? No. Would I have been able to tell you 2 years later her brother almost died from a car accident? No. Would I have been able to tell you my husband passed away 2.5 years ago? No. Because maybe something up here from above was saying it's better that I don't know. I don't feel I could have handled it.
Now, it's obvious And I think I gave this answer at the beginning of the show, that can you predict the lottery numbers?
No, I don't. I have many people ask me that.
I am sure.
And I always say to them, hey, if I could predict them for you, do you think I wouldn't be getting them? No, I cannot predict lottery numbers. And I like the casino, though. But I'm pretty good at the crap table, by the way, Pearl. But I don't think that's psychic. Maybe it is. The longest I've held the dice has been 45 minutes. So I've done pretty well with that.
You know, in the years past, we've heard psychics all over the place, but we didn't hear the word that often, mediums. Now we're seeing shows, and actually it was you that created this medium show on television. Now everybody knows it, but you didn't get the credit. This is why I said you're humble with this, and everybody's collecting hundreds and thousands of dollars, and you're just helping people. But what is the difference between a psychic and a medium? And I watched a reality show where one person, not naming names, said, I'm a medium, I'm not a psychic. And yet some will say, I'm a psychic, but I'm not a medium. And then I hear others saying, I'm both. What's the difference?
If you are a psychic, you're also a medium. So you have the gift of both of those gifts. You can't just be psychic and not be a medium, not look at someone and say, I see your son between you. Because when I have people that come to me, and they could be mother and father that just lost a son, a daughter, or a mother, I give them the psychic of their where they're working or when they should change, so on and so on. But I also see a light begin to come between them. And as that light forms, it's their son that they lost. And people are so happy with what I see. I believe that there's no difference, Pearl. I believe
difference.
If you're psychic, you're a medium. If you're a medium, you're a psychic. Why would you say you can't do one and you can do another? That's impossible.
Okay, but can mediums really, and you would know it, you just said it, but can just mediums, the ones that says they're not psychic, can they see dead spirits?
Oh, yes. I would say that a medium could, but that's... And I don't mean this unkindly. I'd say that's a part-time gift.
Now, why could you see somebody and I can't? What's the difference? Why? What's wrong with me that I can't see?
There's nothing wrong with you other than the fact that you have chosen not to do it.
I have chosen not to do it. So the average person chooses not to become a psychic?
Well, yeah, it's kind of when you have a dream and the dream is so real, and I say, have you dreamed or dreamt of your loved one recently? And they say, oh, yes, and this is what the dream was, but it was a crazy dream. No, it wasn't. Anyone can have a dream, and the dream is a psychic vision, and you can see those that passed over. Some people say pennies. They find pennies. Some people find dimes. I remember one time when my husband was still with me that I couldn't find a quarter to put. Someone had cleaned my car and they took all the quarters. So I couldn't find a quarter to put in the parking thing. So I'm there, and I went in the store, and a hairdresser gave me a quarter that knew me. And I came home, and my husband said, look, there's a penny. I just found a penny. It's Helen. And I said, you found a penny. You'd think I'd find a darn quarter that I needed from her. Well, guess what? I went into my night shift in my office because I work through the day and in the evening, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. And I was straightening the two chairs for the people in case there were one or whether there were two. And I looked down and saw something shiny. There was that quarter. And I said, darn, Helen, you could have given it to me earlier, So I still keep the quarter, ladies and gentlemen. And every once in a while, just the other day, I saw a quarter.
What makes you, I mean, I know you sit back, as I sit back in the credit industry, you sit back in the psychic industry, and you see all these coming out of the woodwork, as I always say, the credit coming out of the woodwork, and you see them all making it big and famous and everything else, and getting their $1 million homes and all. And you're still humble.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well,
and not just humble. The average, I've done homework, and to look, just because somebody was on television, they're booked up for 3 years. And I remember asking you this question and said, how could they be booked up for 2 years? And I'll never forget your answer. Do you remember your answer?
Not exactly, but I can tell you one thing. If I were an average person, and I don't consider myself average. I mean, do I go out and do things? Do I pull weeds? Do I everything else all of you do when I can? Yes. But my feelings are that I can't say why I am the way I am, if you understand. But I'll know if you need help. I'll just know when you need help. And the reason I'm humble is because I believe that's how God made me. I've been through a lot. You know, when I lost my grandfather, we had no money to bury him. Thank God the rich farmer who yelled at me and thought I was a boy, and I was stealing his apples all the time, paid for the funeral. I thought I was going to go into a home, but my apple pie aunt, Mary, came and got me and took care of me, and until my mother and I could see each other off and on. But I believe that my humbleness comes from my life, the pain in my life. I've been raped. I admit that. Has it affected my life? I don't think so. I really don't. I really feel as though a lot of you are affected by it. And you know what? The one thing is I usually know it, and I'll tell you how. You know how they say a drug addict knows another? One alcoholic knows another? One person who's raped knows another. There's that pain, and they're not saying something. And I reach over, and I have to hold your hand. And I hold your hand and say, why don't you tell me about the rape? And they start to cry, and there's always tissues on my desk. In fact, very, very good psychiatrists send me their patients when they can't get to the bottom of a question. And my humbleness comes from God. That's the only thing I can say is being humble. I am not the most beautiful woman in the world. I am not the most perfect woman in the world. If someone parks in my property in the back and blocks my cars, I will say, get that car out of there right now. I am not perfect, but I love all of you. And I think that's it, true love. And where does it come from? My heart, from God. I've been through it all, and I'm going to take you for your rides to make your life easier when I see you.
You know, it's interesting. Valerie and I are back-to-back on WWDB on the radio every Monday, and I sit across from her. And when calls come in, and many of you out there that listen to the show, now you're seeing us both side by side. But when you call in with your question, she has this pad and paper, and she's writing and writing. And as she's writing, I see her go into another world. And I'm actually sitting there just watching and observing. Because then at the end of the show, I would say, did you know what you said to that woman? And she'll forget everything. She will actually forget everything she said to you. And that's when you hear me, even on my radio show, I will say, hey, you should get a reading from her. Because she's got a lot more to say on this paper and pencil, but we don't have enough time on the radio. And a lot of people, you know, you want to know your future naturally. And a lot of people are afraid to know. I've run across so many people that heard you, Valerie, and heard of you, and they would say to me, oh, I'm so afraid to hear my future. Why are people so afraid of psychics as well?
Well, it depends on the psychic they're going to see. I haven't had that happen to me.
Will you give bad news to people?
Yes.
Because that's one of the questions. Will you give a person bad news?
Yes, I will give bad news if it's happening. I am not going to say you're going to be hit by a train on Friday because I don't see that. That's not the gift God gave me. If I see, with my medical background, if I see that you need to have certain tests or you need to have certain things done by your doctor, I will tell you. I will say, I want your father. When I look at pictures, I'm very good with pictures, and I ask people to bring pictures of those living and deceased, and they bring them. I may look at a father's picture and say, your father needs a cardiologist, and they may say, oh, but he already had a stent. Well, he may need another one. Would you please do that for me? Go see a good cardiologist. Or I may say to someone, you know, right at this particular point, I want your breast examined. And I don't want just a mammography, because I don't believe in just a mammography being medical. I say get an ultrasound as well, which happens to show up more than a mammography will. The bad news that I will say is, if you come to me and someone in your family is very ill, and you tell me, this is my grandmother's picture, but she's failing a little. I said, honey, I'll say, she's failing and you've got to get ready because she's not going to make next March. That's the kind of news. And you say to me usually, well, then I'll make sure I make the next 6 months. And I say, look, I could be off a month or two, so remember that. We're not perfect. Psychics are not perfect.
Are you? That's the other question. Are you ever wrong, and what's the percent? If somebody goes to a psychic, what do you think the percent is that they're going to get accurate information? Do some of them guess?
It depends on the psychic. It really depends on the psychic, because I have people now that are coming back to me that came to me 30 years ago. I just got a call from a woman the other day that said to me, Valerie, I came to you 20 years ago and my mother had died at that point. And she started crying. Well, I wasn't going to hang up on her for an appointment. I don't usually take the calls myself, but it was meant to be. And I said, honey, I'm so sorry you're crying. What's the matter? She said, my 47-year-old son is dead. And she made an appointment for her husband and herself to come in together jointly. And I said, I'm so sorry. And I stayed on the phone with her a while. I will do that sometimes. I will stay on the phone for a while because I know what you're feeling. I've been through it all.
You know, you did mention, but you didn't let the people know you are a nurse as well.
Yes, I was a nurse, am a nurse. I will always be a nurse. You know what they say, 2-year pre-med student, did that too. I mean, Jefferson University, great school, very hard. You come out a doctor whether you are or not. Yes, I am, and I'm happy that I'm a nurse, and I'll tell you why. My neighbor had told me that she had a problem with her throat. I diagnosed that it was just thyroid, thank God. I am able to diagnose problems that you're having. I may say, tell me where the pain is, or tell me what's happening. And at that chance, I'm able to help save your life. And remember, the one miraculous thing is that I pray a lot. I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm still praying, and I ask God to watch over you. And usually the outcome is good. And if it is not good, when I say, prepare yourself. A woman came to me and said, don't tell me about myself, Valerie. I have 5 children. I have cancer. I'm dying. And I did. I told her about her children. I held her in my arms. She was very strong. She didn't weep. She was happy about her children turning out well, and that her husband would go on in time. That's my honesty.
You know, many of you, Valerie Morrison's from the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, and many of you is from out of state, different countries even. And if you're from another country, you do have clients from other countries.
Yes, I do. Afghanistan, the Marines, the CBs they're the ones who write the most to me and call a lot. They can't use phones anymore, cell phones, because the enemy has learned how to detonate a cell phone. So they do write to me on my website. They get the website or they hear it from somebody back home, and I do get back in touch with them by phone or computer. We can talk on the computer. And the thing is that I don't charge our men. They did send me a flag, and they sent me an award to my manager and myself, and that's Frank D'Angelo. You all know of him.
No, and California does not know of him. Other countries do not know
Frank
of him.
D'Angelo
That's why we don't bring names.
Is the man that does a lot of my work for me on the computer that you'll see. And I do want to give him credit today because I know he'll be watching this also. But I wanted to say that I got the flag from the CBs, and I got an award for Frank D'Angelo and myself for helping the Afghanistan CBs and the soldiers there and all the military there free of charge.
Well, you know, my show today is because when I said you're so humble, you give everybody the credit but yourself. I have seen you on my show bring on psychics, helping them out, and that's when I didn't know you. And you know how I met you was not even meeting you, was from my own mother. When she said, there's a psychic in the Philadelphia area. And those of you from other states, you know, I didn't know Valerie Morrison then, but I do now. Very good. She's, if it wasn't for, you know, my best friend, now she's the next thing to my best friend. But she doesn't give herself the credit. She's so into helping you guys. She gives everybody else the credit. And I get annoyed at that now as her friend, because she's got a gift from God. She undercharges people, and she's got the best. I always say with credit, when it comes to credit, I say, you know, you tried the rest, now try the best. Well, if you tried the rest and they're booked up for years, try the best. Because not only she's humble, she'll give everybody else the credit but herself. And I believe, and she wasn't expecting this, but to give her the credit today, she's the angel of the universe today, and she's the angel of all the people. I'm giving her the angel.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
And I think she earned it. So I don't want to hear anybody else's name on here for credit, because who gets the credit on this show is not me, is Valerie Morrison. And I hope she earned her medals today, because she should have for all these years. As I said, Valerie and I, we go way back, and yet, you know, we were on the same shows. We must have been walking through green rooms together. But anyone out there, again, you have many credit problems out there, and they call me the credit guru. But I'm going to have a special treat for you that watched all the YouTube shows, that those of you that do become my clients will receive a free reading. But you're going to have to put this when you call my toll-free number or go to my website or email to say, I watched the show, I'm going to become your credit. You're going to have your credit and your future. You talk about your credit, your future. The show, WWDB, is our show. Your credit, we're back to back. Well, I decided to make this bigger than light. In other states, other countries, California, my clients from all over the United States, you want a free reading, you won't have to wait 2 years. And that appalled me when I did some homework on this. You can also get an email reading. You can get an email reading from Valerie Morrison. All you have to do is go to my website to ask me, how do you do it? How do you do it? And I will make sure Valerie gets it all. And the phone calls, you can call my toll-free number, 1-800-876, because when she's busy, I'm going to make sure she gets to each and every one of you with your reading on the phone that you're not in the area. If you're in the area, the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I think it's great. You can make an appointment to come and see her. My one question was, when I always thought when you're doing a phone reading, it's more psychic because you're hearing their voice.
Mm-hmm. I love to hear the voice. It's kind of the way we do WWDB, and Richard calls us. He's blind, but you know, you pick up what's going on around him and the people who were passed away around him. Yeah. You know, the voice is very important when you're doing a phone reading. People say, how do you do the phone? Is it as good as coming to you? Absolutely it is, because I'm kind of boxed in to you. It's not as though I'm seeing you, but I'm feeling. I'm feeling your heart. I'm feeling whether it's broken. I'm feeling if you've had an injury, how your health is. It's almost the same, actually, as being in the office, but I love for you to come to the office. And the reason is I always say hi.
But that's only Philadelphia now. You got to remember, you're dealing with the whole world here.
Oh, I know. We've had, well,
you're dealing with the whole world.
From France, we've had calls from Italy. We get calls, but the timing. So as you suggested, it's really good to be able to do the computer, because the timing for you may be 4 in the morning, and I'm asleep at 4 in the morning.
Let me tell you something. For the email readings, you can go to Valerie's website for email readings, but we're going to sit down because we got some prices together for email psychic readings. You can email her the questions, and then she will email it back to you within 24 hours, what she feels. And this is all over the world. And then with the phones, if you want a personal phone, you can go to her website, which is on the bottom here, and it'll tell you the fees that she charges. And you know what? And I'm sure, you're going to see the differences between all the psychics out there. I'm not knocking psychics because I'm for them 100%. What I am knocking is when their prices go up, the more famous they get, their prices skyrocket. And if you're out to help people, you know what? They need your help. Just like with me doing credit. All these businesses came out of the woodwork and charges people $4,000. I was just told yesterday $5,000 from an attorney's. This is crazy. And we've been doing this for years. So if you want an icon, I call her the icon of the psychic world because she cares. She sees about what's going on in your future. And take advantage of this offer. And if you don't have a credit problem and still wish to become her client, all you have to do is go to her website and she will do the rest. Or you can go to my website, toll free, email me, and I will help you out to get through to her and what has to happen. I want to thank you, Valerie, for coming on to the show.
Pearl, I really appreciate everything. And for your producer here, I want to say I love him, and I did 30 years with his father.
Speaking of that, let's take a moment here. I'm glad you brought that up. This is, when Valerie first came to this studio, I said, does this bring back memories? Because our producer here, naturally, is Ron Homer. Valerie was on the Irv Homer show. That's in the Philadelphia area. Many of you, that haven't known, but if you're in the Delaware Valley, you were on his show for how long?
I was on his show for 30 years. And I've been doing this for about 40 years now, in my office at home, which is in my home, but it's a beautiful Victorian, 300-year-old home, so you'll love it. Everyone loves that waiting room. And Irv brought me on board, and he would yell at me, and there were times that I had to learn not to be this wishy-washy little girl, with the answers like, yes. Or, that will happen in 2 months. And he'd say, will you stop and knock it off? So now you hear me on the radio and you hear me say, if a husband is cheating on you, what do you want him back for? Get rid of the bum. He's going to do it again. What? He's with you and then he's with somebody else and you think he's not going to go back to somebody else. And then you see the producer there holding up a sign. Amen. So there is a tough part of me. And the reason is I will not candy coat my answer to you. You will get the truth.
Now, the biggest question before we end the show is Irv here today?
Oh, you better believe it. I feel him so strongly here, and I can just see him smiling at me. And he really always said to me, kid. He called me kid. Come on, kid, do this. Come on, kid, we're going here. Come on, kid, we're going over there. And he would say, the kid's coming on the show today. That's Valerie Morrison, the psychic. And the funny thing is that when I do the New Jersey radio show that I do, they call me the kid. So... Yes, Irv is with me, and I know that he's pushing me to be, and that's what WWDB said the other day, if you remember, is, what are you being so wishy-washy for, Valerie? That is what Irv Homer taught you. Yeah. And next thing I know, Sam, who's with,
that's what I said. You're too humble at times. You're too humble. And when you come on the show,
be tougher,
and be tougher. One little last thing I did forget, and 5 minutes real quick is there, and I know the answer is going to be, but people out there, when your animals die, do we see our animals?
Oh, when I had my cerebral hemorrhage and I died for 4 weeks, I have to tell you, I went through the film and it was just beautiful up there. And all these cats and dogs and horses and everything were coming through the film. But I was waiting for mine to come, which were Helen's, of course. She always had poodles. I always have police dogs and cats. And they were all coming through. And so, yes, they go to heaven and they look for their master or mistress. Yes.
Unbelievable. I want to thank Valerie Morrison for coming on the show. And next week, you don't want to miss next week. I have the mortgage guy who's going to tell you about the foreclosures, modifications, refinances, all the myths about what you're hearing about from all the banks out there that are going under. You don't want to miss next week's show. We got a lot of great shows coming up. Thank you again, Valerie.
Love you. God bless.
Interest rates are going